So Docker, eh? Docker deployment. Let's unwind and unpack this a little bit. So we've been running our apps locally, right? Everything's been like localhost 5001, blah, blah, blah. If you want to share your app with the world or our friends, you would have to pull Amanda and pick up your laptop and drive to their house to show it. That's obviously not scalable, obviously. So how do we do this? Well, whenever we had our React apps, we would deploy to Netlify, right?
Right.
And what did that do? That took a copy of our built product, and it copied it up to a cloud service, and it ran on the cloud service. Cool, right? Now we're going to take that exact same idea, we're going to take a copy of our built code, and we're going to push that out to the cloud. But instead of going to Netlify, we're going to go to a service called Heroku. Why? Netlify is a really good CDN. It's really good for static client files. Like our React stuff. React, even though it looks dynamic and lively to us, is really just some JavaScript, HTML, CSS, right? And then some magic on top. Some JavaScript magic on top. There's no database, there's no API, so it's great for Netlify. But Netlify does not allow backend services. Heroku does. Heroku is a free cloud hosting site. Where's my Chrome? Heroku.com. It's not fun. I logged in? I am logged in. Yay! Makes me happy. So here's all my stuff up on Heroku. Just to go to their actual homepage. So this is what we're going to be using. There are many different cloud hosting sites out there. Heroku's a popular one for smaller companies and startups and students because it's free and awesome and doesn't require a credit card to sign up, which is even more awesome, at least for me at least. So here we are. You'll notice that its languages that are supported, something's missing. You don't see the wave.net here, right? What do we do, right? So this is where our good friend Docker comes into play. So Docker is a deployment technology that allows us to virtualize our server environments for a cloud hosting provider. Let's simplify that a little bit now. Yeah, right? What Docker is, let me...
Virtualizes.
Service?
Yeah.
Deployment technology virtualizes.
So the problem that it solves is that
Heroku doesn't support .NET.
right, Heroku doesn't support .NET, right? It just supports Docker. The problem is that dev environment. I know, I love this. Oh,
That's what I'm lying about.
yeah, I know. I just saw that. Anyways, so the problem that it solves is that your development environment is usually different than your production environment, right? For React, you're working on your local machine, right? But you're deploying it to a Netlify. Does Netlify service have the exact same computer that you have up in its cloud? No, it's different, right? Same with this. We're developing our .NET stuff locally on our computer with our dependencies, our environments, our things here. That's different than what's up there in production. That difference could potentially be dangerous. Just a side story about that. I built a website for an non-insurance company, a insurance people, but they had a report generator part. They had a part that looked at the database and generated a PDF based on it. That worked perfectly locally. It worked perfectly fine on the server inside my closet. But the second we ported it to a cloud hosting provider, it broke with no meaningful error messages. It turned out that a cloud server provider did not have the same drivers for rendering out a desktop display that the PDF viewer actually used. So those rendering libraries that were there for a desktop site, desktop computer, because it had a screen, were not there in production, the site broke. Docker helps solve that problem. We go, hey, here's an environment that our machine, that we want our code to run in. It's going to describe everything about the environment, what OS it is, what flavor it is, how to run it, how to start it, what dependencies it have. all that for us so that we don't have to care about it. And what it does, it actually set up and build that environment around our application for us. So we can run our app in development in the exact same environment that we can in production. But it also allows us to abstract away any requirements. We saw Heroku doesn't do .NET natively, right? But Heroku does do Docker. So we can now provide Heroku with a Docker file, this roadmap to my environment, and say, run my app inside of this environment. This environment is a .NET environment. So now we can run our app anywhere that supports Docker. Dante, you had a question.
How's like yarn lock? Better.
On a bigger scale, yeah.
Yeah.
Much bigger scale.
Yeah, on a much bigger scale. But the same kind of idea is that we're
Way more
describing the
intense.
environment. But this is everything about the environment, not just how the house
So does it emulate the environment, or like how does it actually do that?
virtualizes. Yeah.
Modern CPUs on computers have like virtualization technology like built in at the hardware level. So you can, instead of just like running one operating system, you can divide the resources on the hardware up and run 10 operating systems virtually with the same performance. Like you're not losing anything by having that layer in between the operating system and hardware. So you could run like Windows and Mac and Linux all on the same hardware. Each one of those thinks they're talking directly to the hardware, but really there's like a thin virtualization layer in between, and that's like supported at the hardware level now on modern computers. It's pretty cool. And that's like how a lot of those systems on the cloud are. Like your system is running like on a very thin slice of the machine that might be hosting 100 other little thin slices, and that keeps them separate for security reasons from each other. It's pretty cool stuff.
Are you talking about like when you partition your hard drive to run different operating systems? Is it the same thing?
So this happens like at the memory level, at like every level. So like say that machine has 64 gigs of RAM. Well, now I'm going to assign 16 gigs to each of these separate things. Oh, that hard drive has 500 gigs. I'm going to partition it, and I'm going to give access to one of those partitions to each one. So it's much more than that. That's like a very small part of it.
Okay.
Instead of just booting into one operating system or the other, it boots into like a very thin version of Linux that's running virtualization software that then divvies out access to the hardware resources to the separate operating systems. It's like having like 4 computers virtually shoved into one physical piece of hardware, but each one of those 4 computers doesn't know that it's not its own computer.
Right.
Willie's nodding his head because I'm pretty sure you did.
Oh,
This is your jam.
Yeah, definitely.
WSL is Windows Subsystems for Linux. I think it's like a virtualization for Linux and Windows.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. It's using the same stuff. But Docker uses this exact same stuff and creates a standard interface for that virtualization to happen, so that you can be like, here's a box. Docker doesn't care what's in it, but I'm telling you what the inputs and outputs are and how to wire other things. And there's a standard for that. So because Heroku supports Docker, Heroku supports literally anything that you can shove into a Docker container, which is really neat.
Yeah.
How does Docker do that though?
Magic.
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 Does Docker have competitors?
There's a few.
Yes.
But Docker is also open source, and it's like has huge market share. So like those two things combined means that like Docker's Docker.
Yeah.
Right.
But even like I think Kubernetes is a thing, but it serves a slightly different purpose.
I say I don't know if I call it a competitor. I call it an augmenter.
Yeah.
Probably like a
I think Kubernetes works with other virtualizations
Yeah.
besides Docker.
Yeah.
so
yeah.
it's all-
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even with old operating system, there was always a layer before the hardware.
Yeah.
There was always that layer because you had to write that communication between the hardware and the operating
Yeah,
system.
like if you were running Windows 2.1, you had to go with DOS first.
Right.
And then like DOS was running some
And someone figured out,
layers.
yeah,
BIOS, which means that in the hardware.
yeah. Some people figured out about a decade and a half ago that you could make these systems virtual, where they think that they're talking to something and they are, but they're doing it in a way that you can control. It's not attached to it. So this is the next evolution to that.
Okay.
I know.
No, that explains it. It's like, this is that on a very large scale.
And from our perspective, there's a lot of things that's going on behind the scenes that normally would have had to happen for us to do this. We don't have to do that anymore. We set up a system pretty quickly.
So this is Heroku or Docker is going to contain just the server or everything, like all static data.
It's going to contain the actual thing that runs it, so the server, the .NET code.
Okay.
The Postgres database that you're going to get sits next to it, kind of on top of it, that your Dockerized .NET app just talks to. So your data is still going to be persistent, but every time you deploy your app again, you're actually putting a new container there.
And that's Heroku specific because they provide you Postgres.
Yeah.
If you were say like deploying Docker onto like hardware that you own, then yes, Postgres would be in one container, your app would be in one container. You have Nginx high performance HTTP server, another container with a load balancer, another container. And then you might have 30 instances of your .NET app running in separate containers simultaneously for performance reasons. And then you could scale those across 4 separate pieces of hardware and then they would run. It's like maybe your app takes a gig of memory, and if your server has 64 gigs of memory, then give a little bit to the to the core systems, but then I can run 48 copies of my app on this and handle like when maybe it could only handle 100 requests per second. Now I can handle 4,800 requests per second simultaneously. But then you have load balancers in front of that. This stuff gets really complicated, and that's why DevOps is a job.
Right.
This was Shimron, Catherine's husband. If any of you have a chance to meet him yet, that's what he does.
Oh, okay.
Is manage all this stuff, and it's because of stuff like Docker, which you can program these configurations and write scripts to initialize them and all. It's no longer just like a Linux systems administrator. You're half programmer, half systems administrator, DevOps. Mic drop. Peace out.
Well done, Jason.
Yeah, Docker's always a really interesting project because it solves problems that we haven't encountered yet. But it's always like, ooh, this is really kind of cool and powerful, and it makes our lives a lot easier.
And it has a really nice icon.
It does. I love that icon. Even without it being rainbow, I love it. The little whale in the boxes. I love it. That's where Docker was actually inspired by, was shipping containers. Because shipping containers, like whatever you fit inside this box, I don't care. I can ship. The exact same idea. I don't care what's inside a shipping container. If you pay me to ship this box, that's fine.
So is it a boat or a whale?
It's a whale. It's a little whale. As we'll see later. See that little whale? There's a whale. Yeah, I love that.
we'll get one of those.
You'll get a whale. Did you see they spotted 2 whale sharks off the coast of Clearwater? Like yesterday, like recently. Even more interesting, they spotted a giant squid in the Gulf of Mexico.
Wow.
They got footage of a giant squid in the
Wow.
Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, it's off the coast of Louisiana.
That
How
can't be a good sign.
Yeah,
Not a good sign.
I mean,
bad.
how big?
Yeah, how big is the transcript?
It was just a juvenile, but it was still huge. I forget how big they said, but it made a basketball look small. I know. Basketball, but small. Anyways, fun. I know it's irrational, but now I don't want to go in the ocean.
Oh my god. Okay, you guys, the video.
The video's like a Cthulhu video. Anyways, here's our apps. Yeah, right. Anyways, whale sharks, whales, Docker. I had to get back here. So we want to deploy our app to Heroku. Right? If you use the SVG template, you should see 2 files here that look kind of awesome and kind of meaningful for us right now. Deploy.sh and Dockerfile. So as we said, that Docker describes the environment that we're in. If we crack open our Docker file, this is the environment we need to run our .NET app. 4 lines, right? That's it.
Awesome.
It's saying, hey, find this image. It's from Microsoft, it's .NET version 2.2. That's awesome. So it already has all the dependencies for .NET installed. It's pretty much a blanket server. I believe it's a Linux server. That just has the .NET CLI installed. We're saying, hey, run our DLL. Our DLL is what our app makes, and that's what actually gets run under the hood. Whenever you run .NET Watch Run, it compiles it, and it produces a .dll file. and then it's running that .dll file. All right, Dante.
Just for trivia, do you know what DLL means?
Dynamic library. Yeah. what-
Sorry.
Dynamic library.
Dynamic link. It's dynamic link library.
Correct. So yeah, all that's saying is that hey, go to Microsoft, grab that image, set our current directory to app, copy over all of our files to that app folder, and then run our DLL. Ta-da! Magic. Whenever you do your own files, you need to make sure that this .NET template is the same as this DLL right here inside of your bin folder. It is for me, coincidentally. Just make sure that that's the thing, because that's what's going to say start my app. All right. So my Docker file,
The DLL was in
the bin folder,
the bin. Okay.
bin debug netcore app 2.2 and DLL.
And we're gonna have to change that for any reason, right?
Only if it's different.
What would make it be different?
Okay.
If you name your project something weird, but it should be the same. It should be that.
And if we were changing it, we'd be changing the command line to match the file we have in our bin.
Correct. But it should be the same. Just kind of as you deploy stuff, just be cautious of that. So that's the Docker file. That's it. That's all we need to know about Docker.
What?
What?
So that's
This-
why Blackmagic was 3 blacks, right? It's like
It is.
that level of Blackmagic.
The way that Docker works is a mixture between distributed systems, the internet systems, and OS operating systems. Those are 3 words that scare any developer. And put them all together in one big soup. It's like, that's a soup I don't want to touch. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. So that's Docker. On top of that, we're going to be learning like 3 or 4 Docker commands, but that's it. Because in order to deploy our .NET apps, if we hop on over to deploy.sh, these are the 6 commands that we need to run in order to deploy our app.
That was nice of you.
I know, now they're in an sh file, and actually you can just run .deploy.sh, just run this file, and it'll run those commands for you.
That is
On
awesome.
Windows, you have to change the extension from sh to bat,
Got it.
but that's it.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's look at what these commands do after we get our Heroku app ready for us. I'm going to deploy this. This is our to-do list app that we built last week. I want to deploy this to Heroku. Hi.
This is the .NET, the C# and .NET, like on top of the database that we
Correct.
wrote, and the React app on top of it.
Not the React app.
Okay,
Just the
just the database.
Just the API and database. That's it. So I want to head back to here, to Heroku. And I want to select New App. Create a new application. Ta-da. I'm going to name it SDG, one list, and y'all are 14.
Yes.
Cool.
One line or one list?
One word, yes.
One.
One. Happy now?
I mean,
Are we good,
it's
Phil?
your app.
Phil, we good?
I wanted
It's still
to make sure
available.
you were good.
I am good. I would have been annoyed with that in 3 minutes. So, yes, Amanda.
You picked new app, not new pipeline. What's a new pipeline?
A new pipeline has something to do with DevOps.
Okay.
Just like Docker, we're going to scratch the surface of what we can do with Heroku. We can actually put entire pipelines in Heroku. What that means is that we can go, hey, when our code is pushed to GitHub, grab it, run these tests, deploy it here, and if the tests fail and succeed and deploy successfully, send emails to someone else letting them know that that has happened.
That sounds awesome.
It does sound awesome. It also sounds very complex and crazy to set up.
Oh yeah, I'm glad someone else has done that and that I don't.
It is
I can
very-
mess
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. This is like the most DevOps talk we'll have the entire cohort.
Thank God.
We can do an entire cohort just on DevOps.
Yes.
Yeah, right. And that's it. Create an app. Boop. It'll create for me an application that looks like this. If I go to that application in my browser, You see now I have my own URL, sdg1list-14, herokuapp.com. That herokuapp.com should sound familiar. I'm sure you've seen that before once or twice. Surprise, surprise.
Wasn't it Minesweeper?
What?
Wasn't it Minesweeper?
Minesweeper, OneList, SDG Employees, Astro Lounge.
All the APIs.
Yeah.
It's like it's free and we eat our own dog food. Right? Default application here. This is awesome. This is our good default state. If you ever see this, this means you haven't deployed yet. Just so you know. Yeah.
You just created the bucket.
Yeah. Yep. So now I want to further define the bucket steps to actually put it there. So I'm going to take, I need to finish creating the bucket first before we do anything else. This is just a server. This is not a database yet. We use Postgres, right? That's our database engine. That's where our data is actually stored. So I want to do what's called an add-on. And I want to add, nope. That's not what I want to do. I want to find an add-on for Postgres. Hobby free, that's fine, provision. So now this has given us a Heroku, a Postgres database on our Heroku instance. That's awesome, right?
So that was under overview, and you said select.
Overview, configure add-ons. You see we have our own database here now. And it's dynamically generated that for us. Where is this database? If we go to settings, reveal config variables, here's the URL for our database. Ugly, right? We don't need to know this. This is fine.
And that's what we put in our context, database context file to do the connection.
Funny you should mention that, right? If we head over to our database context file, because you're right, this needs to go inside of our database context file. See this on our on configuration? It's going grab it from our environment. So grab the database URL. If it exists, it's going to parse it out into a format that we like.
Right.
Because our connection string format that we like is in this format, right? Postgres database connection strings on Heroku are in this format. Looks slightly different, right? There's no database equals, user ID equals, table equals. There's none of that stuff. It's in this crazy janky format. This thing right here converts it. Yeah, it takes care of it for you, so you don't even need to know that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's nice. We didn't have to file that on our house.
Yeah, that's a very fun code to solve. I'm actually proud of that was 3 lines of code, but that's a different story. So it gives us the connection, so we don't need to worry about it. Bottom line, we don't need to worry about it. But it gives it to us. So now that our bucket is ready to receive our app, we actually need to send our app to it. Now, our sending of our app, these 6 lines. But what these 6 lines are doing, these 6 lines are building our application. They're packaging it up in a Docker container, Docker image, and it's pushing that image up to our where we're going. So that's what those 6 lines are doing. Then it's also saying, hey, use our latest image.
It's also tagging too.
What?
You're doing the tag. That's the tagging. You're tagging with the proper registry name.
Mm-hmm. So we need to change 2 things in here for each project. This right here, the image should be whatever your project's called. So this is SDG 1list14. And you can make these something meaningful and make them up right here. It doesn't matter. Just stay consistent. Then we also need to change Heroku Web App. This right here is whatever you named your application inside of Heroku. So I named mine this, right? SDG 1list14.
Okay.
But it's still an image.
So on line 5 and 7, it's the image. That's the box that we're putting it in. We're saying, hey, put my app inside of this box called an image, and then ship that image to my website, and then tell my website to use the latest image. Because every time we deploy our website, we're not updating it. We're technically overwriting it. We're saying, hey, use this new code. Use this new image. Use this new thing. Feeling all right so far? It's a lot of steps, but it's not that bad. So I'm going to run these commands one line at a time so you see what they do. Kind of break them down. So the first one is that we're going to .NET publish C release. So what this line does for us, this will build our application. It will compile it. It will do all our compile time checking. But then it will produce a DLL file that's optimized for production. So it will be slightly smaller. It will run slightly faster. The error messages will be slightly different because it's not built for debugging. It's built for actually release. And if you notice what this does, inside of our bin folder, we now have a release folder as well.
Yep.
With a publish directory. And this folder is actually what we want to deploy to Heroku. Because that's our app. That is our app in entirety is inside of that folder. We want to deploy that. So we need to move our Docker file, CP Docker file, into that newly published app, the newly built app. Docker file. And now I want to go, hey, Docker, please build me a new image called SDG1list14 image, and use your source of truth, use the directory, the thing that we just built. So take the thing that we just built and created, and turn that into a Docker image. And as you see, it's running our Docker commands.
Mm-hmm.
After it's done that, we're tagging our image. We're saying, hey, you know what? My app now uses this image. But we got to push it up to Heroku. So Docker push my app that I've just tagged up to the internet. This is the thing that's actually putting our app from our local computer up to the internet.
So tag just what creates that registry file?
Yeah. So now I'm going to do a thing. This step might take a while the first time that you do it. But that's okay. And then this very last step here, what this says, now that it's up on the cloud, now that it's up there in my app, we need to tell it, hey, actually run that image. As you notice, we're still on the last version, right? We're still on the default app. We want to go, hey, Heroku, deploy our app, actually release our app to the public. So, Heroku, container release. You notice we're using two new command line commands, right? Docker and Heroku. You will have to install those. There are links in the handbook for that. Releasing images web to there. Now when I come here, this should refresh. It's currently deploying. For us to see what's going on our server, if we go here to more and hit view logs, this logs is like your terminal.
Oh, cool.
It'll show you when errors you're running, it'll show you what's happening. And if we look here, we see the very familiar message, now listening on a port. You notice that's no longer port 5000, and that's okay. It's whatever port Docker and Heroku agreed on. So it doesn't matter to us because if we go to our API, we actually have our stuff here. So now it's up on the web. It's migrated, it's all there.
But
That's it deployed.
Who's hosting the
Taking care of
database?
business.
Heroku is.
Then why did I see AWS in the Postgres link?
Great question. Heroku runs on AWS.
And it's on web service.
Yeah,
That's pretty funny. Because I thought Heroku was a competitor of AWS.
sort of,
Okay.
kind of.
Your enemies closer down
Mm-hmm.
or just throwing them all.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, because Phil, I think you saw it in here, right? Yeah, Amazon AWS. Yeah, the servers and everything. Heroku is pretty much a layer of services on top of AWS.
Not surprised.
Nope, not
Especially
surprising.
if it's free. Fun
Yep.
fact, 41% of the internet runs on AWS.
AWS went down for a day. That was a fun day.
I like that.
It was the day the internet died. It was terrifying. Man.
Okay. I don't know how to ask this question, so bear with me because I'm gonna meander through it. When you opened that just now, and it's a database URL is Postgres blah blah blah, we saw the AWS. After that you went back over to our code in database context. And database context knows to talk to that thing because of those 3 lines of code?
Yes, because of,
22, 23, 24?
actually it's this line of code right here. It says check out the
And that's
environment.
because this says database URL and that's what the other one is called?
Yep.
Okay.
What's the one line of code that does all of them? Just because-
Deploy.sh.
Deploy.sh. To run all 6 lines?
Yeah, just because I like how it looks when it does like 20 things at once.
Yeah, right. So in order for us to do that, the very first time we have to elevate the permissions on the file.
Isn't chmod going to turn into an executable?
Exactly, because I want to run that file. That file, that .sh file, we now want to run that file. We need to go, hey, operating system, this file you can run. It's cool. And then deploy.sh, just /deploy.sh or /deploy.bat if you're on Windows.
Oh, so you put all those lines of code in
Yep.
a executable.
Yeah, so now just,
Oh, that's cool.
So if you added a patch endpoint.
Yep.
You'd run deploy.sh when you were
yeah.
done?
So let's add a patch endpoint real fast.
Cool.
Just because. It won't do anything, but. HTTP patch. Public action results. To-do item. Patching. Return an OK. A new to-do item. Just to return something, just so it shows up in our documentation. We've now made a change, right? That's not up on our server. If I run /deploy,
Can we connect that to our GitHub to run every time we push?
if you want.
I don't have time for that. I don't even want to go there.
It's actually not. It should
Is
be.
it?
I haven't tried it, but it shouldn't be that difficult.
It only changed the one thing that it needed to change?
Yep.
That's nice.
Yeah. Because they're like, oh, you only change the actual DLL file inside of it. It's gonna keep everything there. Aha. So now that I've redeployed it, if I come over here, should have done this with the logs open. It restarted. There we go. Ta-da! It works. Now I should have a patch here. There's my patch.
Yay!
Mhm.
That is cool.
Nice. So that big long URL, you put that in the database context file, where it says my URL or whatever.
Which long URL are you talking
The
about?
one that says Postgres.
You don't have to worry about the Postgres URL.
No?
We made no changes for that. We just added the Postgres and everything else just worked.
Oh, okay.
Definitely 3 blacks for Black Magic. Like, this is,
Yeah.
lots of people got murdered for this.
Yeah.
Lots of PM.
You okay? Whatever that was.
It's okay, she has another weekend.
How do they,
That's true.
How do they make money? How do they stay up if they're not?
All right. So how does Heroku make money?
Yeah.
I'm sure they got charge services.
They do. So we're on the free tier of stuff. So, but you notice what the free tier doesn't have. The free tier doesn't have HTTPS, which is interesting. Because I think money HTTPS already. Yeah, I think we get that for free anyways. But we get we get stronger machines, more powerful machines. We also get this never sleeps and sleeps after 30 minutes of inactivity. That means that if no one hits our site after 30 minutes, it's gonna put it to sleep. And
That's
then
why,
when someone hits it, it's gonna take a little bit of time to wake it up.
that's why I couldn't get the old captions the other day.
So yeah. You notice with the old capsules, you know some of the APIs that we use.
Employee database one takes forever.
It takes like a minute or two to spin up.
Yeah.
That's sleeping. If you
Okay.
pay, you don't get that sleeping. If you pay more, they're powerful. That's how they make money. Because like people, devs are like, hey, I spun this up on Heroku. And people are like, I like this. This is awesome. But it goes to sleep after 30 minutes. Fine, I'll toss $7 a month at it.
That's exactly actually that's almost
That's
identical how it happens. They stand it up for free or cheap, and
Yeah.
then they run into limitations, and they you got to pay more, and they end up using the same system.
Yeah, because it's cheaper just to pay them $7 a month than it is to rewrite the system for someplace else.
So they're pretty good.
Is there something you recommend us to invest in? Like, we have to.
While you're here, I wouldn't put $7 a month in. I never have yet.
Okay.
And I have a plethora of apps on here.
Pretty reasonable though.
Mm-hmm. There's also ways to get around that as well. It goes to sleep after 30 minutes, right?
I was just keep waking it up.
Yeah, so you just you have someone or something keep hitting it every 30 minutes to keep it awake. And there are services that will that will hit your site every half hour for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's how I have my initiative tracker. The thing that's actually on right now, it has something hit it, I think, every 10 minutes.
In a track.
Because it's attached to
DD.
it's attached to a Slack bot that needs it to be active. So yeah. So that's deployment.
License plate game.
That's deployment.
Yeah.
What is the license plate?
Every summer, my family divides into families, like households, and we play license plate bingo. And the first one to hit all 51 states wins. It's a little competition we have every summer.
How old is he?
51 plus DC. 50 plus DC.
DC has their own license plate?
They do.
It says taxation without representation.
Yes.
It does? Go look it up.
I know.
No one's questioning.
That's why it's funny.
So it runs all summer?
Yeah. It goes from Memorial Day to Labor Day, or whatever that is.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember doing it as a kid with like on road trip. That is taking it to a whole nother level. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We usually win first because Alyssa travels for work. So whenever she goes to military bases in like Seattle, she gets all the hard ones. Like Montana, Alaska, Hawaii, North Dakota. Those ones are hard. No one lives in North Dakota. And no one wants to drive from North Dakota either for some reason. I don't know.
Pretty rare.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, so yeah. This was actually, I built this with Node.js, Vue, and GraphQL just to have fun with it.
What's GraphQL?
GraphQL is supposedly the next iteration on a RESTful API. Is now we can define our API schema and we can run queries against that. Right?
Okay, I need an example of that.
Yeah, so an example of that is GraphQL
Oh, so you're not querying your database any longer?
You're still querying your database. So
The
now,
way you worded that sentence made it sound like you're like, I'm gonna look at this API and I'm gonna think really hard about this API and then I'm gonna have the data.
pretty much that's what it is.
So that's how you made that sound.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do things when I think really hard about stuff.
So
but not
our-
actually
Yeah,
query
right.
databases.
Our API is now no longer just endpoints, but it's endpoints and structure,
Oh, okay.
right? So I'm given this. My queries are no longer special URLs. My queries now have a body with them that look like this. Hey, go to the projects, give me their taglines, look for the projects with GraphQL. And then I only get that.
The tagline for that particular project.
Yes. So if I had a whole bunch of fields there, instead of me getting everything, like we would in a RESTful API, like the movie API, you got a lot of stuff. The weather API, you got a lot of stuff. It's pretty much like dump, I don't care. GraphQL says, oh, I only want these things, not everything. So only give me these things.
So this solves select and view model problems.
Yes.
It just like eliminates the use for a view model.
Pretty much, because at that point we're just saying, here's my entire structure of my project. So it's a different way to look at it at an API. There's no like RESTful concepts, no resources anymore. It's just like, here's a structure. I'm going to use this new query language against the structure to only get what I want.
Cool.
Kind of
Yeah.
sounds nice.
It sounds nice. And it's really awesome consuming it. It's not so awesome creating it.
Because you got a lot of front end work you got to do to get it up.
The front end work's actually really easy.
Really?
Yeah. Let me show you the code real fast. GitHub.com. And Dewey.
Yeah, do you make that face about it because you're used to working a certain way and this is a different way of thinking about it? Or because it's fiddly in a way you're not used to?
It's like a lot of things, I haven't run into a problem that it solves yet.
Okay.
Whole bunch of repositories going back a year. More than a year, way more than a year. Aha. So like, source. So like in my view, this is Vue.js. You'll notice that it won't be that hard to read because you all know JavaScript. Yeah.
Yes.
So like in order for me to get
You do.
all the license plates, I'm gonna make that a wee bit bigger.
It's an async.
It is, but it's just a post, right? There's nothing too crazy, it's just a post. And we're going to a URL, and we're passing it an object as a query. So it's saying, hey, I have a query on my server called get license plate for a family. And it's going to return to me a family plates that has these things inside of it. So on the client side, it's easy. It's like, hey, run this query, give me these things, and that's it. I'm going to get an object back that looks like this. Here's my parameters. So this doesn't look too terribly crazy, right? I mean, it's different than what we're used to. It's no like body or anything like that.
Right.
But like that's all it is, quote unquote.
Okay.
Which is fine. It's a new query language. It's a new language, new syntax to learn. But all the concepts are the same. Hey, go to this location, run this query with these inputs, and give me this back. Right? But on the other side of that, on the server side, I had to build out my schema. So my schema is everything that could be inside of my system. And that's what that big long line 10 through 38 is.
Which you would have anyway, because you have to build your schema out and store your data.
Yes.
You're just exposing your schema to everyone.
You know how RESTful is technically typeless?
Right.
This has types.
Okay. Right.
That are different, yeah. So even though it solves the view model problem, whoever said that, I think it was either Amanda or Dante, which one? But it also introduces it again because, as you'll see here,
You're just doing it somewhere else.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's still there, but it's a different sense. And
This is Node, right?
yeah, oh, this is Node, by the way. Not that it's relevant here, but you still have to define this somewhere. But not only do you have to define all the types and all the properties and everything you could have inside your system, every single structure, you also have to define what mutations you could have. Mutations like your puts, your pats, your posts, your delete, you're changing data, so you have to define those as well. So it was a lot of definition of stuff up front.
Changing data before it
Yeah.
gets back to you, like you're filtering it?
Yeah,
Or is
so
that what
like-
you actually mean?
On line 19, I'm defining a new mutation, mark plate as selected. It's like, hey, I found a license plate. Yeah, that's awesome. But like, I had to define like what that was, and like what it looked like, also what the ins and what's the outs. So it's a lot more, you're defining it in a different way. And as I was doing this out, I was like, this is a lot of work for something that I can do in RESTful super easily. So like consuming it's awesome because it's just a brand new query language. It says, here's what I want, give me all these values, and that's it. Boom, done. Oh, I want to change stuff. Cool, boom, done. Defining out the server side of it, that's where it gets hard and complex.
Can we see your middle?
So far, yeah, in a second. So far, like we tried doing it here for our in-house software for it to manage y'all, but like we actually had to abandon it because it was taking too long to get right. So we abandoned GraphQL for RESTful API. Phil, you got a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to see a little bit more of like your Node, because I know Node works on like routers and middleware and I don't know, a bunch of stuff I don't really know.
Yeah,
but
so like here's my entire node server right here. I'm saying here's all the routes that I have for my GraphQL. Use cores, I'm using a GraphQL server, and I'm running on port 4000. Then all of these are in separate files. So like plates.getAllPlates is in services, plates. Get all plates. This is using a MongoDB server,
Oh, okay.
if that makes.
Yeah, no, I've built a RESTful API that spoke to MongoDB using Node.js, but now it's been so long that it's kind of faded from me. But yeah, it just looks so much. It's so much cleaner than MVC.
I mean, this is an MVC structure.
Like you're saying, like it's in the same structure that you set it up in MVC.
Yeah, because it works. That's the best structure for an application.
Okay.
Because I believe my models are right here. So yeah, it's still an MVC app. It's just in Node.js.
And didn't the Iron Yard just teach Node, or
We taught one cohort of Node.
oh, it's just one cohort?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a long story behind that. But yeah, it's just one cohort. Two students. I'm proud of those two students.
I thought it was only two who jumped on that. Because I want to say my brother, when he was in the Iron Yard, it was Node.
Not at our campus. Maybe some other campus.
Another campus.
But even then, I don't think we had a Node program on any campus. But I'm not. Great question, Pete. Down a rabbit hole. What was a license plate game?
Oh, that's right.
Do we need to install the Docker extension for VSC?
You won't have to, but it's needed. It's recommended. You don't have to, but yeah, if you want the whale there.
Yes.
You don't want the well.
I have the whale there,
That's all
but
you had to
it's
say.
still recommending to install it.
I don't know what it's recommending to install, because that's the extension.
It's a Docker extension, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it's recommending either.
Let's find out.
It's not recommending me any Docker.
Show recommendations.
I'm willing to admit this does seem a lot more efficient than throwing my computer in the car at 11:30 and driving to my friend's house.
I hope so. So that's what it's recommending for me right now. None of those are Dockers.
NPM.
Even when you click on it, it just goes to recommended and then it doesn't even show.
Right,
Docker.
yeah, it recommends Docker and then it doesn't come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the extension that I have is called Docker. With the whale and everything like that.
And it just recognizes .sh files or something.
It recognizes Docker files. So anywho. So that's deployment. I encourage y'all to try to deploy your inventory API app. Try it. If not, your next project you'll be deploying anyway, so it doesn't matter. Man,
If this doesn't deploy the React side of it,
nope.
how did you get the display for your license plate?
So that is because I set up my server to have both my React app, my Vue app, my front end application inside of my API. So they were actually the same app. If you recall with this, they're two completely separate apps. They're parallel folders.
Yes.
So I can deploy one without deploying the other one. So they're very independent of each other. That's awesome. But sometimes we want them on the same URL. Sometimes we want them on the same server. Sometimes we want them and need them together.
Right.
That's a great segue because tomorrow we're going to be doing a React app instead of a .NET application.
Cool.
Ooh, changed up a little bit. We have a little bit more scaffolding for us. But yeah, that is tomorrow's goal.
Cool.
So that's a great segue to say lab time until 5. All right? Feel free to ask me about anything, capstones, anything like that. I'll be around. That's all I got.
Capstone.